June 25, 2020, Germany woke up to shocking news. One of its biggest technology companies had just filed for bankruptcy. Billions of dollars were gone. Investors were stunned. Employees were terrified. Politicians demanded answers. And somewhere, one of the company's most powerful executives had disappeared. His name was Jan Marsalek, a man few people knew. But soon, the entire world would be searching for him. Because according to investigators, the company he helped build had a problem. A very big problem. 1.9 billion euros. Money that was supposed to exist. Money that investors trusted. Money that auditors expected to find. Money that simply wasn't there. The scandal would become one of Europe's biggest corporate disasters. A story involving fake documents, international investigations, private jets, secret meetings, and one of the most mysterious disappearances in modern business history. But to understand how everything collapsed, we first need to understand how Wirecard became a star. The story begins in Germany. For decades, Germany was famous for its engineering. BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Siemens, Volkswagen. The country built incredible industrial giants. But there was one problem. Germany had very few global technology companies, especially in financial technology. Silicon Valley had its tech giants. China had Alibaba and Tencent. But Germany wanted its own digital champion. Then came Wirecard. Founded in 1999, the company operated in electronic payments. At first, few people paid attention. The business sounded simple: processing digital payments, helping merchants accept online transactions. Nothing glamorous, nothing revolutionary. But timing was on Wirecard's side. The internet economy was exploding. Online shopping was becoming normal. People were buying products digitally. Businesses needed payment solutions. The world was moving online, and Wirecard positioned itself perfectly. The company grew rapidly. New customers arrived. New partnerships emerged. Revenue increased. Investors noticed. Then something remarkable happened. Wirecard became one of Germany's biggest success stories. The company expanded internationally. It acquired businesses, opened offices around the world, presented itself as an innovative financial technology leader. Every year seemed bigger than the last. The stock price kept climbing. Investors loved the story. Here was a German company, competing with international technology firms. Finally, Germany had a fintech champion, a company that represented the future. Then came the ultimate symbol of success. In 2018, Wirecard joined Germany's prestigious DAX index. It replaced Commerzbank. This was enormous. The DAX contained Germany's corporate elite. Being included meant prestige, respect, recognition. Wirecard had officially entered the highest level of German business. Financial newspapers celebrated. Television channels praised the company. Analysts recommended the stock. Politicians admired its success. Investors rushed to buy shares. Everything seemed perfect. At its peak, Wirecard's market value exceeded $30 billion. It became worth more than Deutsche Bank. Think about that for a moment. A payment company founded in 1999 had become more valuable than one of Germany's most famous banks. The success appeared extraordinary, almost unbelievable. Inside the company, one executive was gaining enormous influence. Jan Marsalek. He wasn't the CEO, but he was one of Wirecard's most important figures, and perhaps its most mysterious. Unlike many executives, Marsalek preferred operating behind the scenes. He rarely sought attention, rarely appeared in interviews. Yet people inside the company described him as brilliant, ambitious, exceptionally intelligent, and incredibly persuasive. He joined Wirecard at a young age. He never completed university, yet somehow, he rose rapidly through the company. By his 30s, he was overseeing major operations. He handled international business, managed relationships, and became deeply involved in Wirecard's expansion strategy. Colleagues often found him fascinating. He spoke confidently, displayed extensive knowledge, and projected an image of sophistication. But there was something unusual about him. He seemed interested in things far beyond business: intelligence agencies, military operations, geopolitics, secretive networks, topics most corporate executives rarely discuss. Some people found him charismatic, others found him strange, but nearly everyone agreed on one thing: Jan Marsalek was different. As Wirecard expanded, the company increasingly depended on international operations, particularly in Asia. These operations became extremely important. According to company reports, they generated substantial revenue, large profits, strong growth. Everything looked impressive. Investors loved the numbers. Analysts praised management, and the stock continued rising. But numbers can be powerful and dangerous because investors often trust them, especially when those numbers tell a story they want to believe. Around this time, a few journalists started asking questions. The questions seemed minor. At first, certain transactions appeared unusual. Certain documents raised concerns. Certain business relationships looked complicated. Nothing definitive, just questions. Wirecard denied any problems. Executives remained confident. The company insisted everything was legitimate. Investors largely agreed. After all, why doubt Germany's biggest fintech success? But the questions didn't disappear. They grew. Journalists kept investigating. Some employees became uncomfortable. Documents emerged. New allegations appeared. And gradually, a disturbing possibility started forming. What if Wirecard's success wasn't exactly what it seemed? Inside the company, Jan Marsalek continued expanding his influence. He traveled extensively, met important people, managed critical operations, and remained at the center of some of Wirecard's most complex international businesses. He appeared indispensable, someone who knew everything, someone involved in nearly everything. Nobody realized it then, but years later, investigators would focus enormous attention on him. Because when the scandal exploded, Jan Marsalek would become one of the most important figures in the entire story, and eventually, one of the world's most wanted corporate fugitives. Meanwhile, Wirecard's success story continued. The company looked unstoppable. Germany celebrated. Investors celebrated. Employees celebrated. The future appeared incredibly bright. But beneath the surface, danger was already growing. Questions were multiplying. And somewhere inside Wirecard, a financial mystery was quietly taking shape. A mystery involving 1.9 billion euros, money that would eventually bring down an empire and force one executive to disappear. By 2018, Wirecard looked unstoppable. Germany's fintech champion was thriving. Its stock price had soared. Investors were celebrating. Analysts were optimistic. And executives spoke confidently about the future. Everything seemed perfect. But sometimes, the most dangerous moments in business are when everything looks perfect. Because beneath the impressive numbers, questions were quietly multiplying. And those questions were coming from an unlikely source. Journalists, one newspaper in particular, refused to stop asking questions. The Financial Times. Its reporters began investigating Wirecard's operations. At first, the allegations appeared minor. Perhaps accounting irregularities. Perhaps internal problems. Nothing more. But every answer seemed to create even more questions. The journalists noticed something unusual. Many of Wirecard's profits appeared to come from complex international operations, especially in Asia. The company claimed enormous success in several markets. Yet understanding exactly how those businesses operated was surprisingly difficult. The structure seemed complicated, sometimes too complicated. Wirecard rejected every allegation. The company strongly denied wrongdoing. Executives accused critics of attacking Germany's technology champion. Some investors believed the company completely. Others saw something else, a warning sign. Then, the Financial Times published more reports, more documents, more allegations. The pressure increased, and suddenly, a simple accounting question had become an international story. Wirecard stock became extremely volatile. One day, shares would rise dramatically. The next day, they would collapse. Billions of dollars appeared and disappeared in market value. Investors became nervous, yet management remained confident. Inside Wirecard, Jan Marsalek seemed calm, very calm, perhaps too calm. According to people who later described those days, Marsalek appeared certain that everything would be fine. He reassured colleagues, dismissed concerns, and continued operating as if nothing had changed. But the questions kept coming. Regulators became involved. Auditors increased scrutiny. Investors demanded answers. The company needed proof. And eventually, that proof would come down to one extraordinary number: 1.9 billion euros. According to Wirecard, this money existed in bank accounts. The amount was enormous. It represented a significant portion of the company's finances. Investors trusted it. Auditors expected it. Markets believed it. The money was real. At least, that's what everyone thought. Then came the audits. Accounting firm EY requested confirmation. A normal process. Companies prove money exists. Banks confirm balances. Everything moves forward. Simple. Routine. Nothing extraordinary. Except this time, something was wrong. The confirmations became difficult to obtain. Documents arrived late. Information seemed confusing. Questions remained unanswered. The process became increasingly strange. And the deeper auditors looked, the stranger it became. Then, the unthinkable happened. The banks supposedly holding the money said they had never held it. No 1.9 billion euros. No accounts containing those funds. No evidence. Nothing. Think about that. Nearly 2 billion euros. Money investors believed existed. Money appearing on financial statements. Money helping justify the company's enormous valuation. Simply didn't exist. The discovery shocked everyone. Investors, employees, analysts, politicians, Germany, the world. Because companies do not accidentally lose track of 1.9 billion euros. Amounts that large cannot simply disappear. Suddenly, Wirecard's success story collapsed. Questions became accusations. Confidence became panic. And panic spread rapidly. The company announced that the money was probably missing. Probably. Imagine hearing that sentence as an investor. A public company worth billions, saying nearly 2 billion euros, was probably missing. Markets reacted immediately. Wirecard stock crashed. Again, and again, and again. Billions of dollars in value evaporated. Almost overnight. Employees watched in disbelief. Some feared losing jobs. Others feared legal consequences. Many simply couldn't understand what was happening. For years, they believed they were working for one of Europe's greatest success stories. Now, everything was falling apart. Meanwhile, attention turned towards senior executives. Who knew what? When did they know it? How could this happen? Who was responsible? These questions suddenly became urgent, and one name appeared repeatedly: Jan Marsalek. As Chief Operating Officer, Marsalek had overseen important international operations. Many of the complicated businesses investigators wanted to understand connected back to him. He possessed enormous knowledge, perhaps more than anyone else. Investigators needed answers, and they needed them quickly. But something unusual happened. Marsalek disappeared from public view. He stopped appearing normally. Communication became difficult. Colleagues struggled to reach him. And inside Wirecard, fear spread rapidly. Because when executives start disappearing, people assume the worst. Then, the company fired Jan Marsalek. The decision came suddenly. After years of influence, he was gone, officially removed. But investigators still needed him. They wanted explanations, documents, answers, and most importantly, they wanted to know what happened to 1.9 billion euros. Then came another shock. Just days after being fired, Jan Marsalek left Germany. He boarded a private aircraft and vanished. At first, people assumed he would return. Perhaps he needed time. Perhaps he was consulting lawyers. Perhaps he was preparing statements. But days passed, then weeks, and there was no return. One of Europe's most important corporate executives had disappeared. And now, investigators were facing two mysteries. Where was the money? And where was Jan Marsalek? Rumors spread everywhere. Some said he fled to Asia. Others believed he was in the Middle East. Some claimed he was using false identities. Others suspected something even stranger. Because Jan Marsalek wasn't an ordinary businessman. He had unusual interests, unusual connections, and an unusually secretive life. The investigation expanded internationally. Law enforcement agencies joined forces. Documents were examined. Phone records studied. financial transactions analyzed. The more investigators learned, the more extraordinary the story became. Because this was no longer simply an accounting scandal. It was becoming something much bigger. A corporate mystery, an international manhunt, and perhaps a story involving networks far beyond ordinary business. Meanwhile, Wirecard itself was dying. The company's credibility had collapsed. Investors lost faith. Partners withdrew. Banks became nervous. And creditors demanded answers. The empire Germany once celebrated was crumbling, rapidly and irreversibly. For years, Wirecard symbolized innovation. Now, it symbolized failure. And somewhere beyond Germany's borders, the executive who might know everything had vanished. Nobody knew then that the search for Jan Marsalek would lead investigators into one of the strangest corporate mysteries in modern history. A story involving private jets, secret meetings, intelligence allegations, and one question that remains unanswered even today. Where is Jan Marsalek? June 2020. Wirecard had collapsed. Germany's fintech superstar was finished. Billions of dollars in market value had disappeared. Investors were panicking. Employees were shocked. Politicians demanded answers. And investigators had one urgent priority: find Jan Marsalek. Because if anyone knew the truth, it was him. As chief operating officer, Marsalek wasn't an ordinary executive. He wasn't just another manager sitting in an office. He had spent years overseeing international operations. He had access to sensitive information. He knew the company's structure, its partnerships, its finances, its secrets. And now, he was gone. According to reports, Marsalek told some colleagues that he planned to travel to the Philippines. The explanation sounded believable. He had business connections in Asia, and many of Wirecard's controversial operations had links to the region. Perhaps he needed time. Perhaps he wanted to consult lawyers. Perhaps he simply needed to disappear temporarily. At least, that's what some people believed. Then came another surprise. Philippine authorities announced something shocking. Immigration records showing Marsalek's arrival were fake. He had never entered the country. The documents had been fabricated. The man everyone was looking for wasn't where people thought he was. The mystery deepened. Suddenly, investigators faced an even bigger problem. If he wasn't in the Philippines, where was he? And more importantly, who was helping him? Because disappearing internationally isn't easy, especially when your face is appearing on television screens around the world, especially when investigators from multiple countries are searching for you. Rumors spread rapidly. Some believed he had escaped to Eastern Europe. Others suspected the Middle East. Some suggested Russia. Nobody knew, and the lack of answers created even more questions. The more journalists investigated Jan Marsalek, the stranger his story became. People who had known him described someone fascinated by intelligence agencies, military operations, classified information, secret networks, things that seemed very unusual for a payment executive. Former colleagues later described conversations that seemed bizarre. Marsalek allegedly spoke about international conflicts, security operations, sensitive geopolitical matters. Sometimes, he appeared to possess knowledge ordinary businessmen shouldn't have. At first, people simply thought he was eccentric, an unusual executive with unusual interests. But after his disappearance, those stories suddenly looked different. Much different. Investigators began examining his contacts, his travels, his relationships, and they discovered a man who appeared to live multiple lives. Business executive, world traveler, and perhaps something else entirely. Media reports started connecting Marsalek to individuals linked to intelligence circles. The allegations attracted enormous attention because this was no longer just a financial fraud. Now, the story sounded like an international spy thriller. Private jets, secret meetings, false documents, missing billions, and an executive who had vanished. Every new detail made the story more unbelievable. Yet, it was real. Meanwhile, the consequences of Wirecard's collapse continued spreading. Investors suffered devastating losses. Some lost retirement savings. Others lost business capital. Funds that had invested billions saw enormous damage. Trust in Germany's financial oversight system collapsed. People asked difficult questions. How could this happen? How could Germany's most celebrated technology company hide such enormous problems? The embarrassment was enormous. Germany prided itself on corporate governance, regulation, financial discipline, yet one of its largest companies had collapsed in spectacular fashion, and nearly 2 billion euros apparently never existed. Politicians demanded investigations. Regulators faced criticism. Auditors faced questions. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted accountability. And everyone wanted to find Jan Marsalek. International arrest warrants were issued. Law enforcement agencies intensified their search. Information was shared across borders. Investigators followed leads, examined records, interviewed witnesses, but every path seemed to end the same way. No Marsalek, no confirmed location, no arrest, nothing. Months passed, then years. Still, no public appearance, no interviews, no surrender, nothing. The executive who once sat inside one of Europe's most valuable companies had simply disappeared, and the mystery only grew. Because missing people eventually make mistakes. They contact someone, use money, travel, appear somewhere, leave evidence. Yet Jan Marsalek remained out of reach. Some reports suggested he might be living comfortably. Others claimed he was protected. Some believed he would eventually be captured. Others weren't so sure. The speculation never stopped, because the story had become larger than Wirecard itself. It had become a mystery, and mysteries fascinate people. But while investigators searched for Marsalek, Wirecard itself ceased to exist. The company entered insolvency. Employees lost jobs. Operations ended. Its name became synonymous with fraud. Germany's Fintech champion was gone. The rise had taken more than 20 years. The collapse, only a few days. The story also changed Europe's corporate landscape. Regulators strengthened oversight. Auditing practices came under review. Financial supervision became a national conversation. The scandal exposed weaknesses nobody wanted to acknowledge, and those lessons would shape policy for years. Yet, one mystery remained. The most important mystery. Where is Jan Marsalek? The man who might know exactly what happened. The man who may know where the money went. The man who vanished just as everything collapsed. Somewhere in the world, he may still be watching, reading headlines, following investigations, knowing that millions of people still ask the same question. What happened? And where did he go? The answers remain elusive. But one thing is certain. The search for Jan Marsalek transformed Wirecard from a corporate scandal into one of the most extraordinary business mysteries of modern times. And in Part 4, we'll explore the aftermath, the lessons, the global impact, and why the disappearance of one executive still haunts one of Europe's biggest corporate failures. June 25, 2020. It was official. Wirecard filed for insolvency. Germany's biggest fintech success story was over. 21 years of growth, billions in market value, thousands of employees, millions of investors. Everything had collapsed, and it happened in just a few days. For Germany, the moment was humiliating. Wirecard wasn't supposed to fail. It was supposed to be Germany's answer to Silicon Valley, a modern technology giant, a symbol of innovation, a company that proved Germany could compete in the digital age. Instead, it became one of Europe's biggest corporate scandals. Inside Wirecard's offices, employees sat in disbelief. Many couldn't understand what had happened. Some had spent years building the company. Others had invested their savings in its stock. Many believed they were helping create the future of finance. Now, their company no longer existed. Thousands of jobs were suddenly at risk. Careers ended. Dreams disappeared. And the people who had trusted the company the most were left asking questions nobody could answer. Meanwhile, investors suffered enormous losses. Pension funds, institutional investors, small shareholders, ordinary people. Many had invested because they believed Wirecard represented the future. Some had invested because analysts recommended it. Others trusted Germany's reputation. After all, how could one of Germany's largest companies possibly be fake? But financial markets can be cruel. Trust can disappear overnight. And when it does, the losses can be devastating. Billions of euros vanished. One of Europe's most celebrated companies became almost worthless. Shares that once traded at extraordinary levels collapsed. Investors watched years of savings disappear. Some sold in panic. Others couldn't bring themselves to look at their accounts. For many people, the damage wasn't merely financial. It was emotional, because fraud creates another kind of loss. The loss of confidence. People begin questioning themselves. How did I miss the warning signs? How did I believe this? How did everyone believe this? And perhaps that's the most important question. How did so many intelligent people trust Wirecard? Because this wasn't a small company. This wasn't an unknown startup. This company was inside Germany's DAX index. It was audited, covered by analysts, discussed by major financial institutions, celebrated by the media. It looked legitimate, and that's precisely why it became so dangerous. The biggest frauds rarely look like frauds. They look successful, professional, innovative, trustworthy. They tell people exactly what they want to hear. Wirecard told Germany something it desperately wanted to believe, that it had finally created a world-class technology champion. Investors wanted that story to be true. Politicians wanted that story to be true. Analysts wanted that story to be true. And sometimes, when enough people want something to be true, they stop asking difficult questions. The scandal also exposed weaknesses in regulation. Questions emerged everywhere. Why weren't the warning signs taken more seriously? Why weren't allegations investigated sooner? How did auditors fail to discover the truth earlier? Why did so many institutions trust information that turned out to be false? The questions were painful, and the answers were often uncomfortable, because Wirecard revealed something important. Systems are created by people, and people make mistakes. They can become overconfident. They can trust too easily. They can ignore warning signs. They can believe stories that fit their expectations. Meanwhile, the search for Jan Marsalek continued. Years passed. Still, no arrest, no public appearance, no confirmed location, nothing. The executive who may know the entire story remained missing. Investigators continued working. Journalists continued investigating. Governments continued searching. Yet the mystery remained. And that mystery transformed Jan Marsalek into something unusual. He became more than a former executive. He became a symbol of unanswered questions. Because somewhere, there may be one person who knows exactly what happened. One person who understands where the money went. One person who witnessed the final days of Wirecard from the inside. And that person disappeared. The story feels almost fictional. A multi-billion-dollar company, missing billions, fake accounts, international investigations, and an executive who vanished. If someone wrote it as a movie script, people might say it sounds unrealistic. But it happened. It happened in the real world, and millions of people are still living with its consequences. Today, Wirecard is taught in universities, studied in business schools, examined by regulators, analyzed by investigators, not because it was successful, but because it failed so spectacularly, because it reminds us of something important. Size does not guarantee honesty. Popularity does not guarantee legitimacy, and reputation can sometimes hide enormous risks. So, what lessons can we learn from Wirecard? First, never trust success blindly. Big companies can fail. Famous companies can fail. Even companies celebrated by entire countries can fail. Second, complex businesses require difficult questions. If something seems unnecessarily complicated, ask why. Complexity can sometimes hide important truths. Third, independent verification matters. Trust should never replace evidence. Real businesses can answer questions. Real businesses can provide proof. Real businesses do not depend entirely on confidence. And finally, never assume that because everyone believes something, it must be true. History repeatedly teaches us the opposite. Crowds can be wrong. Markets can be wrong. Experts can be wrong. Entire countries can be wrong. Wirecard wanted to become Germany's greatest technology success story. Instead, it became one of Europe's greatest corporate failures. A company valued at more than $30 billion. Destroyed by one question. Where's the money? A question that still echoes around the world. And somewhere, perhaps under another identity, perhaps in another country, the man who may know the answer may still be watching. Jan Marsalek, the executive who vanished, as 1.9 billion euros disappeared. And that is the story of Wirecard, a story of ambition, trust, reputation, and one of the biggest corporate mysteries of modern times. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more stories about billion-dollar frauds, corporate scandals, startup collapses, and Wall Street's biggest secrets, subscribe to Money Trap and turn on notifications. Because behind every successful company, there is a story, and sometimes the biggest success stories hide the biggest lies. See you in the next documentary.